صل على نبينا صل على محمد.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our weekly Friday sermon discussion show. So today is April the 23rd and Hazur started a series of sermons today about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, which is pretty exciting because now we're having a new chapter of history, of literature, history in our Jamaat. Before we just didn't have all those resources that were there when we wanted to study Khilafat-e-Rashida. But now when you go back into the Friday sermons, fully transcribed with the research and references there, everything you need to know about Hazrat Ali, everything you need to know about Hazrat Usman. And so now we're going to start about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu in the next few weeks, and we're going to be learning a lot about this great Sahabi and this part of Khilafat-e-Rashida. So it's really exciting to start that. Inshallah, Hazur is going to start this series of sermons. So we're going to go right into the discussion. So what we talk about is any points from the sermon that particularly resonated with us. We want to discuss those and see how we can bring them into practical application in our lives. So any points that you guys had, Adil Bhai, and I'm Zahir Bhai, I'm joined by Zahir and Adil's side. So any points you guys have, please start off the discussion and please share.
Yeah, the first point was about how the famous incident of when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu first learned that his sister had accepted Islam, and he became extremely angered and started beating his brother-in-law and even his sister. And he was eventually softened at the first sight of blood when he saw that they were bleeding from his beating. And when he demanded to see the Quran, I thought it was interesting how his sister first insisted that he do wudu or ablution before he sits down with the Quran. And I think this physical cleanliness kind of paved the way for his spiritual cleanliness, and he came into a different state that allowed him to be more receptive to the Quran. And I think this speaks to the importance of ablution as a whole that we perform before approaching Quran and prayer.
Yeah, and along with us, physical cleanliness, ablution definitely is connected with refreshing us. I mean, that's one interesting thing of the effect that water has on us, that when we're excited, then it calms us down. If somebody is angry, then drinking some water and then also doing ablution, even taking a shower, someone is in a rage, then it'll help them calm down. And similarly, if we just woke up and we're drowsy, then taking a shower or doing ablution, it refreshes us. So it has that kind of equalizing effect where it brings us to a certain baseline. It refreshes us. So, I agree that it was really wise of the sister of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu that, in that sort of state of anger, where he was so angry that he started to get a little bit violent, that then he said that I want to read this book. But she recognized mind where you're going to really be able to appreciate the beauties of something this sublime. And so she advised him that you have to go and refresh yourself. And then when he refreshed himself, when he calmed down and he had that water and he did ablution or even showered, then when he came back, then we can see the blessings that the effect that the words of the Quran had on him.
It is powerful how the effect of the Quran had on his heart, that it was just by reading the Holy Quran that changed his heart. We know the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ prayed for either Umar or Abu Jahal to be converted to Islam for the strength of Islam. And it just took the prayers of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the power behind it, and Hazrat Umar reading the Holy Quran. So it kind of, makes you self-reflect that, how much are you understanding the Quran and how much are you sharing the Quran with other people?
Yeah, definitely.
Another point that I thought was interesting was when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was given the nickname of Farooq. It was given to him when he saw that most of the Muslims at the time were practicing, but they were practicing in secret. And he wanted everyone to be able to see that if they truly believed that Islam was that one true religion, then they should march openly. And if we look into the meaning of Farooq, it means differentiating truth from falsehood. So I think as us, it kind of sets a tone within our own circles to not be secretive about being Muslim as it pertains to our own identity. And I think that's going to become even more important down the road as the norms of society continue to change and the line between right and wrong continues to blur. So we need to really double down on our Muslim identities to help that be the core where we differentiate between right and wrong and not follow society's norms blindly.
Yeah, one aspect of that Farouk, which was described, which Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu himself said, is that of consistency, of being straightforward. He said that I was open about my shirk, my idolatry, so I'm going to be open about my belief in Islam as well. And that, I feel, gives us a lesson as well, because he was perhaps the first enemy of Islam who accepted Islam. I mean, maybe I'm mistaken, but it seems like those who accepted before, they were people who were not enemies or opposing Islam. And also, even for example, Hazrat Hamza, he was, he was an uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a prominent person who accepted, but since he was from the same tribe, so he was considered an ally with the Muslims before, anyways. So this was really the first prominent enemy of Islam that accepted, and there an example was established where he said that I'm going to be consistent. So I think that consistency is something, like you mentioned, is definitely that we can establish in our lives and we can take a lesson from. Not just the point that you mentioned about doing tabligh, about being open about our Muslim identity, but also we can ask ourselves that what's the difference between my identity at the masjid when I go for Jummah on Sunday and then during the week. Like I've seen some people, like, they have a clean shave all week, and then by the time the program comes on Sunday, they shape up their 5 o'clock shadow a little bit, and then they have a miniature beard, and then back. See, a person could kind of start to develop like two identities like that, where they're one person at the masjid. So I think that lesson on consistency is, really important and has a lot of value that we can learn from Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu.
Yeah, it's the same with work and school. We're very adamant to be higher and higher in our jobs and to get better jobs and better pay, or to get better grades in school. And we should keep that consistency in our faith as well. And we're not in Pakistan, and nobody's persecuting us for our faith, and yet we're not even as adamant as they were in preaching, and yet they put their lives on the line. We don't have to put our lives on the line. So what's stopping us from going out and declaring that we have the truth? And just like Ramadan is happening right now, my kids, for example, are going to school, and they were like, we learn about St. Patrick's Day, we learn about Christmas. Why aren't they talking about Ramadan? And the Tahir Academy had a Ramadan presentation, and they presented to their class very proudly and very humbly as well. But and they said, this is what we do, this is who we are, and it became part of their identity, and the teachers liked it, the students liked it. So we can take it to our work and our school. We shouldn't be shy.
Yeah, that quality of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu is definitely one that it showed its kind of, you could almost appreciate to an extent how it showed itself in this time of idolatry, because perhaps there was some sincerity behind it, a genuine misunderstanding. But then that same quality of being straightforward, having self-respect, and being consistent, it really shined forth once he became a Muslim.
Another point that I had was about Hazrat Umar anhu's kind heart, but even before accepting Islam, where despite being one of the strongest people, he still had a soft heart. And the story Hazrat talked about was when he was passing by in front of a house that was completely packed up. And when he asked them why they were leaving Mecca, they replied, because the Hazrat Umar and his brother didn't let them practice Islam freely. So in response to this, he turned away and tearfully said, "May Allah be your protector." So I think this speaks to how the spiritually pure people have an innate inclination towards Allah Ta'ala, and because of that, Allah Ta'ala will eventually guide them towards Him.
Yeah. And this definitely shows, like the point we were discussing before of how the qualities that a person has before Islam, they really come out afterwards. The faults that we have before Islam, they also unfortunately continue unless we address them by becoming a Muslim. But here about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, we see that just because he was so rough on the surface, he was so quick to anger, he had such an intimidating disposition, and to the point that people were afraid of him, but that doesn't mean that he was hard-hearted. Everybody has their own disposition. Some people are like that. Even today, some Ahmadis, some people are like that. But the thing is, it's only objectionable if that rough outside, that rough shell also has a rough inside, a hard-heartedness in it. But with Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, we see that he wasn't. Not only after Islam, but even before Islam, that, he's an idolater. And he has such a rough exterior, but then look how soft he is in his heart, that he almost started crying because people were leaving as a result of his own persecution. But still, like there's his conscience and his that thing arose and that awoke in him. So I definitely feel like there's a lesson for us as Khuddam in that as well, because there is something about masculinity that among us as brothers that we want to be kind of aloof and detached on the surface, not really emotional, not showing any vulnerability, anything like that. And to an extent, that's fine. That's part of masculinity. That's part of the way guys are, and that's the way that guys are together. That's distinct from the way girls are together. I mean, that's just something that there is. But the important thing is that we shouldn't be hard within ourselves. Like whatever it is on the exterior that we have to be, or that through culture or through nurture we are, but on the inside we should always be soft-hearted. So it's interesting that from somebody like Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, who was such kind of like a man's man, like he would like win the wrestling matches even before Islam. He was like quick to anger, all these things. But from him we learned the lesson of being soft-hearted and being emotional and having that rikkat, that soft-heartedness in us.
Yeah, and also being able to determine what's right and what's wrong, no matter where it's coming from, whether it's coming from a female, someone younger than you, someone older than you, someone that's not your same religion. You should be able to take the truth and extract the truth from wherever it's coming from, and not be afraid to admit that this is the right, no matter where it's coming from. And so even him accepting Islam was through from his interaction with his sister, and then here he was policing the streets, making sure no one was getting robbed. And then here's somebody trying to leave, and he's humbled, and he accepts it. He doesn't get arrogant. He humbles himself, and that's what acquires you to have that clean heart to accept the truth. And it also shows the lioness that was inside the female sahabi that said that that just said the straightforward word, that didn't beat her on the bush or didn't hide what she was doing, and that humbled somebody that was already like a lion. So when you have the truth, and Allah Ta'ala puts that spirit in you, and we shouldn't be afraid or shy.
Yeah, definitely in those things, we do see that not only did he have a soft heart, but he was humble even before Islam. And again, that's a lesson for us, that those among us who have that fiery disposition, it's fine. But as long as it's accompanied with humility and soft heartedness that Hazrat Umar even had before he became a Muslim. And what's interesting in both of the narrations that were mentioned in today's khutbah is that it was in his interaction with a woman that he expressed humility in a society in Arabia where women were considered nothing. Like, even the Quran speaks of this, of how, it was not considered objectionable for people to bury their daughters at times. And then also women were inherited as property, no rights whatsoever. So we're talking about a segment in society that was considered just completely not equal to men and just worthless in a lot of ways. But still, when he interacted with that woman in front of her house, he is a chief doing like rounds of Mecca. When he interacted, then he humbled, and he was humbled in front of her, and he was overcome with emotion. And also, it wasn't his brother-in-law, but his sister. When she said to him that what you're doing is wrong, then he was humbled. So that kind of shows, with that cultural context in mind, that like that quality of humility and soft-heartedness that existed in him before Islam.
It was interesting that it mentioned that Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam conveyed the news that the heavens were pleased with Hazrat Umar's conversion, which really is inspiring, because Hazrat Jibreel also conveyed a salam to Hazrat Khadija and Hazrat Aisha. But the fact that you're saying that it was him humbling himself, we know that when you humble yourself, then God elevates you. When you elevate yourself, then God humbles you. So it's just that aspect of being humble, that even then the angels pray for you and recognize your righteousness.
Yeah, at that point, like it kind of made me think, because Allah Almighty knew what the future of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was, and maybe like through Allah's knowledge, some of the angels knew as well that this is the fate that's going to happen. And when you think like the Hazrat Umar that we know was Khalifatul Rashid, the Khalifa, and then like that later senior Sahabi, it's like a very different picture. And so it was just very interesting that in the khutbah here, we're starting from the beginning. And just to think that like Hazrat Umar in his 20s, these are all things about him in his 20s. That's like a lot of us as Khuddam are like in our 20s as well. And that personality that he had as one of the chieftains of respected junior chiefs of Mecca, but still that much respect of being an ambassador, of having this much influence. So it's just really interesting that this person who we know as a Khalifa, but right now we're immersing ourselves in Mecca along with Huzur as he's telling these narrations, because when we study history, we want to immerse ourselves. And right now, that's not the Umar that we know right now. Right now, it's this young man in his 20s who has such a unique personality and has such beautiful qualities that are coming out right from the beginning. So it's very interesting. Like it's just an enjoyable another aspect of studying history to just get to know this person again from his youth, and like kind of not think about the person he later was, but who was this person in his 20s, and just get to know him from the beginning. So, I mean, those are some points. Do you guys have any other points before we go into action items? Okay. So yeah, I mean, those are the main points that I had in my notes as well. So yeah, now we'll go into action items so we can start with you guys. So any one point from the sermon that kind of stuck out to you that maybe we can make into an action item in this upcoming week? What comes to mind?
Yeah, this Ramadan I've been trying to study the tafsir of the Quran a little bit more, and after learning about Hazrat Usman or Hazrat Umar Radiallahu anhu's story with him reading Surah Taha's first ruku, I want to sit down and try to read through the tafsir and explanation of, you know, what that truly means in Surah Taha, and to try to get a better understanding of, you know, what Hazrat Umar kind of went through that allowed him to have that change of heart and accept Islam.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the points for me was to always be humble and always try to extract the truth from wherever you find it, whether it's from your kids or from your wife or your parents or whoever, and never think yourself too big to admit that you were wrong, or that you are learning something from somebody that might be not what you think in your heart equal to you. So that's the saying of Prom Sai as well, that we should always be willing to learn and extract the right thing, but that comes with humility, and without humility we can't enter paradise.
Yeah, that's a really good action item, to just find wisdom wherever it is, even from those who we may consider insignificant, because as Umar, even before Islam, he had this quality in him. So yeah, that's definitely something we can benefit from. And yeah, the action item that I had in mind is related to Adil Bhai's, which is that, I mean, it's just fascinating that these people, when they read the Holy Quran, they were so affected by its verses that it changed their hearts. And it's because they had that true spiritual nature within them. Otherwise, Abu Jahl was hearing the same Quran. So it kind of shows that to the extent that we have these qualities in us, that's how much we can benefit from it. So of course, this in Ramadan, we're reciting the Quran more than we usually do every day. So that's definitely a point of reflection and an action item for me this upcoming week, that when I'm reciting the Holy Quran, that I should think that these are words that even hearing once, they change people's lives. So am I just skimming over it and like really missing a lot? And of course, when we're trying to cover a lot and we're trying to finish the whole Quran, it's not possible to have like a life-changing experience every day when we're reading, but still just to recite with somewhat of that appreciation and try to gain more from that recitation with the example of Hazrat Umar and other Sahaba like him in mind. I think that would be an action item for me this upcoming week. All right, so that brings our discussion to a close. So today is April 23. So whatever point that you as a listener may have derived from the khutbah, just try and find one point that resonated with you a lot, and then find your own action item with it. And then during this upcoming week, that action item will be unique because it is an expression of obedience of the fresh guidances that have come from Hazrat Khalifatul Masih that he has delivered to the whole world through his Friday sermon. So we'll bring the show to an end with these points, and we thank you for joining us. So assalamu alaikum and peace be on you.